I'm Iraj Abedian, by training an economist. Over the past 40 years, I've been in different parts of economic analysis. Studied once upon a time for 20 years. I was at the University of Cape Town teaching economics as a professor of economics. Subsequently, I went to the Standard Bank as the chief economist of the Standard Bank Group. And prior to that, got involved with New South Africa's macroeconomic policy formulations. And then when I left the Standard Bank, I established my own two group of companies, one in research and risk analysis and one in private equity. One company called Pan-African Investment and Research, the other one called Pan-African Capital Holding. And I'm very active in both of them. Well, the establishment of my first company after I left Standard Bank in 2005 was essentially to carve out my own professional space. My DNA is as an economist. However, economics appeals to me and I'm passionate about it because what it can do in terms of economic activity, enterprise development, and impact on social welfare. And the focus of my research and risk analysis in Pan-African Investment and Research has been exactly that. What are some of the opportunities in South Africa, in the broader region, and all the way on the continent, as it interrelates with the global economy that is becoming more and more interrelated, integrated, and interdependent. So that was the reason I established Pan-African Investment and Research, focusing not just invest and research side of it, but also about the application of research into real investment opportunities. My focus over the past few years has shifted from within the framework of general private equity investment within our Pan-African capital operations into agriculture. Agriculture appeals to me because it's the cross-section of a number of very exciting variables. Most important, environmental sustainability. Environmental sustainability requires a special attention to agriculture. And for me, agriculture is exciting also because it's a sector in the set of activities that lend themselves to the application of technology. Technology for me is a very exciting part of economic analysis. Agriculture, insofar as environmental sustainability is concerned, requires the use and the application of technology to make it not just farming, but also precision farming. And precision farming then deals with optimum use of water, optimum use of land, optimum use of the ecosystem that you need to put in place for whatever you're producing to be able to give you the best, if you like, optimal, if not maximum yield. At the same time, agriculture is about food security. It's about food security for the broader society and, more importantly, for the poor and the vulnerable. As it happens worldwide, agriculture is also about, call it non-urban areas, not just rural, but non-urban areas by and large. I am aware that technology enables us to do some production in the urban settings too, but at the moment, agriculture happens in the rural areas, and rural area is much of the poverty and a lot of vulnerable communities, especially on the continent of Africa, but not uniquely to Africa. But where we live in sub-Saharan Africa, for me, agriculture and precision farming and paying attention to the environmental sustainability elements of agriculture together with social sustainability, meaning the welfare of the workforce, the welfare of communities, and all of those become combined. As I mentioned, agriculture then becomes a cross-section of all these variables that we need to bring together in order to not only have commercially viable investments as entrepreneurs, but at the same time, make sure that we have maximum impact. Nowadays, the term impact investing is fashionable, is in vogue, and for me, impact investing is nowhere better applicable than agriculture. A very important part of agriculture on the continent of Africa is about greenification of production processes or agriculture operations. And by greenification, I mean producing with minimum carbon footprint. We can never make it zero, I don't believe, not yet, but at the moment we can definitely materially and significantly have an impact on environmental sustainability by making the production processes in agriculture a lot more green with minimum carbon footprint. Of course, what I just explained about the opportunities for greenification of agriculture and food production comes with opportunities and challenges. The challenges remain primarily with the mindset of the funding agencies, the banks, government institutions, DFIs, standing for Development Finance Institutions, nationally and internationally. They oftentimes talk about impact investing. They oftentimes, in fact, regularly talk about environmental sustainability. But in terms of my experience, more often than not, they don't know how to apply it. Their mandate says you need to be environmentally sustainable, but when they want to translate that mandate into funding terms, funding conditions, quantum of funding, etc., they fall flat. They get into a protracted, unhelpful, sometimes destructive loopholes of administrative processes, in their language, risk mitigation, risk identification. But the more I interact with them, the more I realize that they do not have the required expertise, experience, and background to be able to define risk and find risk mitigation processes. So that's the main challenge. That's the biggest challenge that at the moment the agriculture sector faces. Of course, there's a lot of global and national focus on it, but we are a long way from dealing with this particular challenge. The other challenge, of course, is expertise and knowledge, human resources fit for purpose that can apply modern precision farming technology to the agriculture processes. So these are, for me, the top two challenges. Opportunities, plenty. We do have on the continent a great deal of opportunities for the greenification of production, environmental volatility, uncertainty, extreme weather, if you like, that become part of our life. But we need to use technology and precision farming techniques to make sure that the investments that we undertake are more secure and more sustainable. I find in a variety, in fact, in all activities of agriculture, opportunities for investment, whether you're on the primary production or processing or export, etc. And of course, the more we reorient our historic or conventional agriculture production processes and agri-processing methodologies and techniques in line with modern technology, better opportunities come up. And one of the key opportunities that sooner or later in sub-Saharan Africa, if not on the whole of African continent, we need to deal with is learning to have a regional perspective as opposed to a nationalistic perspective, because the scales matter. Precision farming, like many other economic enterprises, requires a minimum scale of production. Then you can do a great deal of more promising and more productive investment opportunities. You can employ, for example, solarization of your energy base much better, much more profitably. So scale up production is important, as well as critical input, such as water and water management. If we think regionally, water scarcity is better managed than if you think nationalistically in the old style and fairly irrelevant methods of putting boundaries where the dams are, where the catchment areas are, where the processing has to happen, etc., etc. So I think those are some of the very exciting challenges and opportunities as entrepreneurs we need to wrestle with to make impact investment in this particular sector to become a lot more profitable and a lot more impactful. At the moment, my personal focus is in an entity or enterprise that I established 4 years ago called Agri Finance Facility. In essence, it's a non-banking intermediary for the distribution of wholesale capital into medium to large farmers, more specifically in the export grade fruits, fresh fruits from South Africa and Southern Africa increasingly. It's an exciting enterprise. Opportunities are huge. And what has made the opportunities so big is pretty much the collapse of the land bank. As you know, 4 years ago, the land bank, under the pressures of state capture, collapsed. It left a massive gap of multi-billion, as large as possibly 40 billion rand of funding gap. The banking sector is not capable of providing the required funding. As I mentioned earlier, the banking sector doesn't have the requisite skills to be able to assess the risk and price the loan and the finance properly. So when in doubt, they chicken out, they fall back on their old habits, overprice, exaggerate the risk because they don't understand it, overprice the funding, and as a result, farmers cannot afford it. So we have a massive disconnect between what is needed and what the funding institutions, be they long-term players in the capital market or be they banking sector, can provide, and they do provide. So I saw a gap here, and I've launched Agri Finance Facility in order to make it an intermediary distributor and intermediate between the sources of capital and the customers. And that keeps me busy all the time at the moment. My activities in Africa at the moment, obviously, charity starts at home. South Africa is my central focus of activities, but increasingly Namibia, Botswana, Mozambique, and in essence, having refined the Agri Finance Facility processes, risk identification, risk mitigation, credit pricing, etc., etc. Now, I must emphasize, it's a challenge that is not finished yet because, as I mentioned, sources of capital are fairly unfamiliar, hesitant, and unable to come with the same level of funding that the market requires. But be as it may, after 4 years, we slowly extending our operations from South Africa to Namibia, from Namibia to Botswana and Mozambique in a very, very systematic and slow process, because it essentially is an enterprise that is all about risk management, but at the same time bringing impact in, at the same time making sure that your clients are in line with what we want to achieve, which is an impactful investment, not in terms of financial only, which is important for sustainability of the enterprise, but also the greenification of production processes. And that's an exciting opportunity. So we work with solar installers, with private sector power companies that are emerging, and hopefully in the next couple of years we will have a subcontinental operations bringing in precision farming with precision energy, with precision environmental management, and hopefully fit for purpose finance that suits the goal of developing this particular enterprise. Yeah, my participation in the recent February 22, 2024 of Green Economy Summit was an interesting one. I pretty much shared elements or salient point of what I shared with you now. I found it very interesting that across the continent, the summit brought policymakers, entrepreneurs, and some institutions to get the discussion and engagements going. For me, it was the first time, and I found it very appealing to interact with some fellow Africans outside South Africa who are busy with similar type of challenges. Also hear institutions of finance, local and international, to hear their perspectives and have a better insight as to how we can collaborate, how we can crack the common challenge of bringing the right finance, the right technology to those who have the land and resources in order to expand activities, but along a new green path of production towards the greenification of African production processes.